The Beaumont Children disappearance is one of Australia's most infamous missing persons cases. The three Beaumont children, Jane Nartare, 9, Arna Kathleen, 7, and Grant Ellis, 4, disappeared from Glenelg Beach near Adelaide, South Australia, on Australia Day, January 26, 1966. The children had taken the 5-minute bus journey from their home to the beach, as they had often done before, and were expected to return home by lunchtime. When they failed to return, their parents reported them missing. They were seen in the company of a tall blonde man, estimated to be in his mid-30s, of thin to athletic build. Despite extensive searches and investigations, neither the children nor their suspected companion were found. The disappearance attracted widespread attention in Australia and abroad. At the time, it was Australia's largest police investigation. The case is considered a significant event in Australian criminal history, as it led to a shift in Australian society's perception of child safety. Despite the passage of over 50 years, the case remains one of Australia's most enduring mysteries. Various suspects and theories have been proposed over the years, but no definitive evidence has been found to indicate what happened to the children. The case remains open and unsolved, and it continues to be the subject of public intrigue and speculation. The disappearance of the Beaumont children also led to significant changes in Australian society, most notably in how parents supervise their children. Before the disappearance, it was common for parents to allow their children to travel alone to parks, pools, and beaches. Following the Beaumont children's disappearance, there was a marked shift in parenting styles, with parents becoming more protective and less likely to allow their children to go unsupervised. The Colonial Parkway murders refer to a series of unsolved murders and disappearances that took place in the Tidewater region in Virginia, specifically in and around the Colonial Parkway, a scenic roadway managed by the National Park Service. Between 1986 and 1989, 8 people were killed in what are presumed to be related instances, given the similarities in the cases. Here are brief descriptions of the 4 double murder cases. Kathleen Thomas and Rebecca Ann Dowski, 1986. Their bodies were found inside Thomas's car on the Colonial Parkway, strangled and throat slashed. There were signs of struggle, but no evidence of robbery or sexual assault. David Nobling and Robin Edwards, 1987. Their bodies were found in the Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge, shot to death. Nobling's car was found at the refuge parking area with the driver's door open and the radio playing. Richard Keith Call and Cassandra Haley, in 1988. They disappeared after a party, and their car was found unoccupied at a York River overlook on the Parkway. Their bodies have never been found, making their case technically a disappearance. But it is usually included with the Parkway murders due to the similarities with the other cases. Daniel Lauer and Anna Maria Phelps, 1989. Their bodies were found in a wooded area near a rest stop on I-64 between Williamsburg and Richmond, some distance from the Parkway. Like the Call and Haley case, their car was found unoccupied, and there were no signs of robbery or sexual assault. The victims were usually in couples and were found in their cars or near their cars. In some cases, the vehicles had been manipulated to appear disabled. The killer or killers were never identified, and although there were some suspects over the years, none have been conclusively linked to the crimes. Despite the passage of time, the FBI and Virginia State Police continue to investigate these unsolved murders. The families of the victims have also sought assistance from forensic experts and other law enforcement agencies. The cases have drawn attention from the media and have been the subject of several television documentaries. The term Highway of Tears refers to a 724-kilometer, 450-mile stretch of Highway 16 between Prince George and Prince Rupert in British Columbia, Canada. This highway has been the site of many murders and disappearances of women since 1969, a large number of whom have been Indigenous. Although official estimates vary, it is generally accepted that the number of victims ranges from 18 to possibly 40 or more. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, launched an official investigation known as Project E-Pane in 2005, which initially focused on 9 cases from 1989 to 2006. Over time, this was expanded to include 18 cases from 1969 to 2006. Many of the victims were last seen hitchhiking along the highway before they went missing, or their bodies were found. The cases have led to criticisms of the police, with accusations that they failed to give these cases the attention they deserved, especially in the case of Indigenous women. This issue has become a part of the larger crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada, a grave and ongoing issue that has been termed a Canadian national crisis and a genocide. Despite the RCMP's efforts, the vast majority of these cases remain unsolved, and the Highway of Tears murders continue to be a source of heartbreak and controversy. As of my knowledge cutoff in September 2021, the exact number of victims and the identity of the perpetrator or perpetrators remain uncertain. The Highway of Tears and the larger issue of violence against Indigenous women have sparked national discussions about race, poverty, and the relationship between Indigenous peoples and the Canadian government. Asha Degree's disappearance is a highly publicized missing persons case from Shelby, North Carolina, USA. Asha was 9 years old when she disappeared on February 14, 2000. On the night of her disappearance, Asha shared a room with her older brother. Her parents checked on her at around 2:30 a.m., and she was in her bed. But at around 4 a.m., her brother heard her bed squeak, but didn't think much of it. It was later discovered that she left the house at that time. She was seen by passing motorists walking along North Carolina Highway 18, around 1.3 miles from her home, despite heavy rain and wind. When one of the drivers turned around to check on her, Asha ran into the woods and disappeared. 3 days later, Asha's pencil, marker, and hairbow were found in a tool shed at a nearby business near where she was last seen. In August 2001, Asha's book bag was found buried more than 26 miles away from her home along the same highway. The bag was double-wrapped in black trash bags and contained several sets of clothes and a New Kids on the Block concert t-shirt. Despite numerous searches, investigations, and media attention, no confirmed sighting of Asha has been reported since her initial disappearance. The FBI joined the investigation in 2015 and announced a $25,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for her disappearance. The community also raised an additional $20,000 reward. Asha's case has been compared to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann due to their similar ages at the time of their disappearances and the level of media attention their cases received. Theories about Asha's disappearance range from abduction by a stranger to the possibility that she was groomed and lured away from her home, but none of these theories have been proven. The murder of Betsy Ardsma is one of the most infamous unsolved cases in the history of Pennsylvania State University, Penn State. Ardsma was a 22-year-old graduate student studying English at the university. On November 28, 1969, Ardsma was in the Patee Library at Penn State when she was stabbed a single time in the chest with a knife. The wound, which pierced her pulmonary artery and right ventricle of her heart, was fatal, though it reportedly caused little external bleeding. Because of the nature of the wound and the lack of a significant amount of blood at the scene, those who found her did not initially realize she had been stabbed, instead believing she had suffered a seizure or similar medical issue. She was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. No one reported seeing the attack, and despite the library being relatively busy at the time, no witnesses ever came forward. There were no signs of a struggle, suggesting that Ardsma may have known her attacker or did not perceive them as a threat. The investigation into Ardsma's murder was extensive, with both campus and local police, as well as state authorities involved. Over the years, several potential suspects were identified, including a man who was seen leaving the library around the time of the murder and reportedly had red stains on his clothes. Despite these leads, no one has ever been charged in connection with Ardsma's murder, and the case remains open. Betsy Ardsma's murder has become a part of Penn State's lore, with students and faculty often referring to the ghost of Patee Library. Her murder has also been the subject of several books and documentaries. The alphabet murders, also known as the double initial murders, refer to a series of unsolved murders that occurred in the early 1970s in the Rochester, New York area. The nickname for these crimes stems from a chilling pattern. Each of the victims had alliterative names, meaning their first and last names started with the same letter. Additionally, each body was found in a town that started with the same letter as the victim's name. Here are the details of the three known victims. Carmen Colon, 10 years old. Carmen disappeared in November 1971. Her body was found 2 days later in a town called Churchville, which starts with the same letter as her name. She had been strangled. Wanda Walkowicz, 11 years old. Wanda was abducted in April 1973 while she was on her way home from a grocery store. Her body was found the following day in the town of Webster. She had also been strangled. Michelle Meinza, 11 years old. Michelle was last seen in November 1973, and her body was found 2 days later in the town of Macedon. Like the other victims, she had been strangled. The murders sparked widespread fear in the Rochester area and led to one of the biggest manhunts in the city's history. Over the years, several suspects were considered, but no conclusive evidence was found to link anyone to the murders. One of the primary suspects was a man named Joseph Nasso, a professional photographer who was later convicted for 4 similar murders in California, also involving victims with alliterative names. However, there was no direct evidence linking him to the Rochester murders, and he denied any involvement. The disappearance of Tara Calico is one of the most famous unsolved cases in the United States. Calico was a 19-year-old student at the University of New Mexico, Valencia, when she disappeared near her home in Belen, New Mexico on September 20th, 1988. On the day she disappeared, Calico told her mother she was going for her regular bike ride along New Mexico State Road 47. She typically rode the same route every day, and her mother would often ride with her. However, her mother had stopped accompanying her after feeling that a motorist was stalking them. On the day of Tara's disappearance, she took the ride alone and never returned. Her mother reported her missing, and a subsequent search found pieces of her Sony Walkman and a cassette tape along the road. Her bike was never found. There were also reports of a Ford pickup truck following Calico during her bike ride, but these were not confirmed. Almost a year after her disappearance, on June 15, 1989, a Polaroid photo was found in a parking lot in Port St. Joe, Florida, almost 1,600 miles from where Calico disappeared. The photo showed a young woman and a boy, both bound and gagged in the back of a van. The woman in the photo was thought by some, including Calico's mother, to be Tara, though this was never definitively confirmed. The boy in the photo was speculated to be Michael Henley, another missing child from New Mexico, but this was later disproved when Henley's remains were found in New Mexico in 1990. Several other photos, some depicting scenes of bondage, have been suggested over the years as possibly showing Calico, but none have been confirmed. The case received extensive attention from the media and was featured on various TV shows, including Unsolved Mysteries and The Oprah Winfrey Show. Evelyn Hernandez was a 24-year-old Salvadoran immigrant and single mother living in San Francisco, California. She was 9 months pregnant when she and her 5-year-old son, Alexis, disappeared on May 1, 2002. The case gained particular attention because it occurred around the same time and in the same area as the high-profile Lacey Peterson case, which had many similar characteristics. Both women were pregnant and disappeared without a trace, leading to media comparisons. Hernandez's wallet was found a few days after she disappeared in another part of San Francisco, but there were no other immediate leads in the case. In July 2002, her decomposed torso, still wearing maternity clothes, was found by a couple walking their dog along the San Francisco Bay shoreline. The body of her unborn child was found with her, but her 5-year-old son, Alexis, was never found. The police investigation into her murder was extensive, but it failed to produce any suspects or leads. Hernandez's boyfriend and the father of her unborn child, Herman Aguilera, was questioned by the police but was not named as a suspect. Critics of the media's handling of the case have pointed out that while Lacey Peterson's disappearance and murder were widely covered by national news outlets, Evelyn Hernandez's case received significantly less attention, leading to discussions about race, class, and media coverage in the United States. The Long Island serial killer, Lisk, also known as the Gilgo Beach Killer or the Craigslist Ripper, is an unidentified suspected serial killer believed to have murdered 10 to 16 people over a period of nearly 20 years and dumped their bodies along the Ocean Parkway near the remote Long Island, New York beach towns of Gilgo and Oak Beach in Suffolk County and the area of Jones Beach State Park in Nassau County. The victims were primarily women associated with prostitution, many of whom advertised their services on Craigslist, which is where one of the nicknames for the killer originated. The killings are believed to have started in 1996 and continued until at least 2010. The case came to light in May 2010 when Shannon Gilbert, a sex worker from New Jersey, disappeared after meeting a client she had acquired through Craigslist. During the search for Gilbert in December 2010, the first set of human remains was found. Gilbert's remains were found almost a year later, in December 2011, in a marsh about half a mile from where she was last seen. Although police do not believe her death is connected to the other murders, the search for her was the impetus for the discoveries. Over time, more bodies were discovered in the area, leading to the conclusion that a serial killer or possibly multiple serial killers were using the area as a dumping ground. The victims varied in age, gender, and ethnicity, and some of the remains were found dismembered and placed in burlap sacks. Despite substantial media coverage, the use of FBI resources, and a number of suspects over the years, the case remains unsolved. Amber Hagerman was a 9-year-old girl from Arlington, Texas, whose abduction and murder in 1996 led to the creation of the Amber Alert System, which broadcasts alerts over television, radio, and cell phones to enlist the public's help in locating abducted children. On January 13, 1996, Amber and her younger brother were riding their bikes in a parking lot near their home. Amber's brother went home, and when he returned to the parking lot, Amber was gone. A witness reported seeing a man in a black pickup truck abduct Amber from the parking lot. Despite a massive manhunt and media coverage, Amber's body was found 4 days later in a creek less than 5 miles from where she was abducted. She had been killed shortly after her abduction. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement, Amber's killer was never identified or apprehended. The case led to a public outcry and calls for a system to rapidly disseminate information about child abductions to the public, which could help prevent similar tragedies. In response, the Amber, America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response Alert System, was created. The system was named in honor of Amber Hagerman, and Amber also serves as a backronym for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response. The Amber Alert System has been successful in locating and rescuing hundreds of abducted children since its inception. However, despite the significant impact of Amber's case on child safety, her own murder remains unsolved.